The morning sun cast a golden glow over Wellington as Catherine, the Duchess of Cambridge, carefully adjusted Prince George's tiny blue cardigan. The 8-month-old prince gurgled contentedly in her arms, his chubby fingers reaching for the sparkling buttons on his mother's elegant coat. Today was special, their first official engagement together in New Zealand, and Catherine felt a mixture of excitement and maternal protectiveness. Prince William had already left for his separate engagement, leaving Catherine to navigate this important milestone with her firstborn. The Playgroup in Wellington had been chosen specifically for this moment, a chance for the future king to interact with children his own age while showcasing the royal family's commitment to early childhood development. As their motorcade wound through Wellington streets, Catherine noticed curious faces pressed against windows, smartphones capturing glimpses of the royal convoy. She had experienced this attention countless times since marrying William, but today felt different. Today, she was sharing this spotlight with her precious son, introducing him to the world that would one day be his responsibility. The Duchess gazed down at George, who was contentedly chewing on his favorite toy giraffe. His bright blue eyes, so reminiscent of his father's, sparkled with innocent curiosity. He had no understanding of the significance of this moment, no comprehension of the hundreds of photographers waiting outside the community center, no awareness that millions around the world would soon see his photographs. Catherine's mind drifted to her own childhood, to quiet afternoons spent in Berkshire Gardens, away from public scrutiny. She wanted desperately to give George moments of normalcy, opportunities to simply be a baby among other babies. This playgroup visit represented exactly that, a chance for authentic interaction, even within the structured confines of royal protocol. The community center came into view, its modest facade decorated with colorful bunting and New Zealand flags. A small crowd had gathered behind barriers, their faces beaming with excitement. Catherine could see children holding handmade signs, their parents lifting them for better views. The warmth of the welcome was immediately apparent, and she felt some of her initial nervousness begin to fade. Inside the building, Playgroup volunteers made final preparations. Toys were arranged perfectly on colorful mats. Juice cups were filled and positioned within easy reach, and anxious mothers checked their own babies' outfits one final time. These were ordinary families, selected not for status or connections, but simply for having children around George's age. Sarah Mitchell bounced her 7-month-old daughter Emma on her hip, hardly believing she was about to meet the future Queen of England. Emma wore her best yellow dress, the one with tiny daisies that Sarah's mother had bought specially for the occasion. Other mothers shared similar sentiments. This was a once-in-a-lifetime experience that they would treasure forever. The playgroup leader, Mrs. Janet Thompson, had been working with Playgroup for over 20 years, but nothing had prepared her for hosting royalty. She reviewed her plans one final time, ensuring every detail was perfect. The activities were simple, standard playgroup fare involving songs, toys, and gentle interaction. The goal was naturalness, authenticity, and genuine connection. As Catherine's car pulled into the designated area, she took a deep breath. Through the tinted windows, she could see photographers positioning themselves, their long lenses focused and ready. Security personnel established their perimeter, their watchful eyes scanning constantly. Despite the controlled environment, she was determined to make this experience as normal as possible for George and the other children. The car door opened, and Catherine stepped out, immediately adjusting George's position in her arms. He seemed fascinated by the sudden increase in noise and activity, his head turning toward the clicking cameras and excited voices. Catherine smiled naturally, her years of royal training allowing her to appear relaxed despite the intensity of the moment. She walked confidently toward the community center entrance, her heels clicking softly on the pavement. George remained calm, occasionally reaching toward interesting objects or sounds. The crowd's reaction was overwhelmingly positive. Cheers and applause followed their progress, with many commenting on how beautiful and peaceful the young prince appeared. Inside the building, Catherine was greeted by Mrs. Thompson and several Pluckett representatives. The formal introductions were brief, as Catherine was eager to begin the actual playgroup session. She could hear children's voices from the main room, and George seemed to respond to these sounds with increased alertness. The moment of truth arrived as they entered the playgroup space. Several mothers sat on the floor with their babies, colorful toys scattered around them. The room fell silent for a moment as Catherine appeared, but she immediately moved to join them on the floor, settling herself and George onto one of the playmats. Catherine gracefully lowered herself onto the soft playmat, carefully positioning George so he could see the other babies around him. The young prince immediately became fascinated by a red rattle being shaken by 9-month-old Lucy, whose mother nervously adjusted her own position to be closer to the royal pair. The atmosphere in the room gradually shifted from formal tension to genuine curiosity as the babies began to interact naturally. George reached toward the colorful toys scattered across the mat, his movements deliberate and focused. Catherine watched with the same maternal pride any mother would feel, occasionally guiding his hands toward appropriate objects while engaging in conversation with the other mothers. Her ability to balance royal composure with authentic maternal behavior impressed everyone present. Emma Mitchell, the baby in the yellow daisy dress, crawled closer to George with the fearless determination that only babies possess. She had spotted his giraffe toy and was clearly interested in investigating this new object. Catherine gently encouraged the interaction, moving the giraffe within Emma's reach while maintaining her hold on George. "How old is Emma?" Catherine asked Sarah Mitchell, her voice carrying genuine interest rather than polite obligation. Sarah found herself answering naturally, describing Emma's recent developmental milestones and favorite activities. The conversation flowed easily, with Catherine sharing similar observations about George's progress and personality. Mrs. Thompson began leading the group in traditional playgroup songs, starting with simple finger plays that the babies could observe and partially participate in. Catherine joined in enthusiastically, her clear voice blending with the others as they sang "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star." George seemed particularly captivated by the musical sounds and the coordinated movements of hands and fingers. During Wheels on the Bus, George attempted to clap along, his coordination still developing, but his enthusiasm unmistakable. Catherine supported his efforts while continuing to sing, her maternal instincts naturally guiding her responses to his needs and interests. The other mothers found themselves relaxing further, realizing that despite her royal status, Catherine was experiencing the same joys and challenges they all faced as new mothers. The babies began to interact more freely as the session progressed. Little James, at 10 months the oldest in the group, demonstrated his newly acquired crawling skills by moving purposefully between different toy stations. George watched these movements with intense focus, as if studying techniques he might soon employ himself. A particularly touching moment occurred when George and a baby named Sophie found themselves reaching for the same colorful stacking rings. Instead of conflict, both babies seemed content to explore the toys together, their small hands occasionally touching as they manipulated the different colored rings. Catherine and Sophie's mother exchanged knowing smiles, recognizing the beautiful simplicity of the interaction. The photographers, positioned discreetly around the room's perimeter, captured these genuine moments of childhood interaction. Their cameras clicked quietly, documenting not just royal protocol, but authentic human connection. The images would later travel around the world, showing millions of people a future king simply being a baby among other babies. Catherine's handling of George throughout the session demonstrated her natural maternal abilities. When he became briefly fussy, she instinctively knew whether he needed repositioning, a toy change, or simply some gentle reassurance. Her responses were automatic and confident, showing none of the uncertainty that sometimes accompanies new motherhood. During snack time, Mrs. Thompson distributed small cups of juice and simple finger foods appropriate for the baby's ages. Catherine accepted refreshments for both herself and George, feeding him small pieces of soft fruit while continuing conversations with the other mothers. The normalcy of these actions, feeding her baby, wiping his face, adjusting his clothing, provided powerful visual reminders of universal maternal experiences. The interaction between George and the other babies became increasingly animated as comfort levels rose. Baby sounds filled the room, gurgles, squeals of delight, and occasional fussiness that mothers quickly addressed. George added his own vocalizations to this chorus, seeming to enjoy being part of the group dynamic. One of the most memorable moments occurred when Lucy, the baby with the red rattle, dropped her toy directly in front of George. Without hesitation, he leaned forward and attempted to return it to her, though his motor skills weren't quite developed enough to complete the action successfully. Catherine gently assisted, guiding his hand to place the rattle within Lucy's reach. The gesture, though aided by his mother, demonstrated an early indication of awareness and consideration for others. The session's midpoint brought a brief pause for photographs, with mothers positioning their babies for group shots that would become treasured family mementos. Catherine participated willingly, adjusting George's position and ensuring he remained comfortable throughout the process. These photos would later appear in frames on mantelpieces across New Zealand, permanent reminders of the day ordinary families shared space with future royalty. As the structured activities continued, Catherine found herself genuinely enjoying the experience. The conversation with other mothers provided insights into different parenting approaches and local customs. She learned about New Zealand baby food preferences, sleep routines, and developmental expectations, information she genuinely valued as a new mother navigating similar challenges. The baby's energy levels remained high throughout the session, with periodic moments of concentration as they explored new toys or sounds. George showed particular interest in musical instruments, reaching eagerly for small tambourines and bells. His reactions to different sounds and textures provided Catherine with new insights into his developing preferences and personality traits. The session reached its peak when Mrs. Thompson introduced bubble play, a universally beloved activity among babies and toddlers. She produced a bottle of bubble solution and began creating streams of iridescent spheres that floated gently through the room. The baby's reactions were immediate and delightful. Wide eyes, reaching hands, and excited vocalizations filled the space. George became absolutely mesmerized by the floating bubbles, his blue eyes tracking their movement with intense concentration. When bubbles drifted within his reach, he attempted to grasp them, his expression showing surprise and wonder when they popped against his tiny fingers. Catherine watched his reactions with pure maternal joy, her face reflecting the same sense of discovery her son was experiencing. The other babies responded equally enthusiastically to the bubble display. Emma clapped excitedly when bubbles landed near her, while James attempted to crawl after the floating spheres with determined persistence. The room filled with infectious laughter from both babies and mothers as the magical scene unfolded around them. Catherine found herself laughing spontaneously when a particularly large bubble landed on George's nose, causing him to cross his eyes in an attempt to examine this strange new sensation. The moment was captured by photographers and would later become one of the most beloved images from the entire royal tour, a future king displaying perfectly normal baby behavior. During this bubble play, something wonderful occurred. George and Emma found themselves side by side, both reaching for the same cluster of bubbles floating just above their heads. Their movements were synchronized, their expressions equally focused and delighted. For several precious moments, they existed simply as two babies sharing a magical experience, their different destinies temporarily irrelevant. Sarah Mitchell would later describe this moment as the highlight of her day. Watching her daughter play naturally alongside the future king created a memory she would treasure forever. The photograph she took with her phone showed both babies reaching upward, their faces illuminated by wonder and joy. As the bubble activity continued, Catherine engaged more freely with the other mothers, sharing observations about their children's different reactions and personalities. She commented on Emma's determined crawling style and praised James's coordination when he successfully popped several bubbles in succession. These interactions demonstrated her genuine interest in other children and families. The playgroup transitioned into free playtime, allowing the babies to explore various toy stations around the room. George showed particular interest in a set of colorful stacking blocks, though his attempts at building resulted more in knocking down than construction. Catherine encouraged his efforts while ensuring he didn't become frustrated with his limitations. During this period, several touching interactions occurred between George and the other babies. When Sophie began crying after bumping her head slightly, George turned toward the sound with obvious concern. Though he couldn't verbally comfort her, his expression suggested an early development of empathy and awareness of others' distress. Lucy approached George during his block play, settling beside him with her favorite stuffed animal, a small purple elephant. She offered the toy to George, who accepted it with curiosity and examined its soft texture with obvious pleasure. This spontaneous sharing between babies created another photograph moment that would later symbolize childhood friendship transcending social boundaries. Catherine's interactions with the other mothers deepened during this free play period. She learned about local parenting resources, discussed sleep training methods, and shared her own experiences adapting to motherhood while maintaining other responsibilities. The conversations were natural and unforced, creating genuine connections that several mothers would maintain long after the royal visit ended. The room's atmosphere had transformed completely from the initial formal tension to warm, comfortable familiarity. Mothers moved freely between their children and conversations. Babies crawled and played without inhibition, and the presence of royalty became simply another element of an enjoyable playgroup session. George's personality began emerging more clearly as he became comfortable in the environment. He showed preferences for certain toys over others, demonstrated problem-solving attempts when faced with challenges, and displayed what would later be recognized as his characteristic determination when pursuing interesting objects. Mrs. Thompson observed the session with professional satisfaction, noting how naturally the integration had occurred. Her experience with countless playgroups had taught her to recognize authentic enjoyment versus polite participation, and Catherine's engagement was clearly genuine. The Duchess was experiencing real pleasure in watching her son interact with other children. The baby's energy began showing signs of the approaching nap time as the session continued. Some became slightly fussier, others more clingy with their mothers, and a few showed early signs of tiredness. Catherine recognized these signs in George and began subtly preparing for the session's conclusion while allowing him to complete his current play activities. During the final free play period, George demonstrated a moment of independence that surprised everyone. He crawled a short distance away from Catherine toward a musical toy that had caught his attention, showing confidence in his mobility and trust in his environment. Catherine watched proudly, allowing him this small adventure while maintaining protective awareness. The interaction between all the babies had created a beautiful tapestry of childhood behavior, cooperation, curiosity, gentle conflict over toys, spontaneous affection, and the pure joy of discovery. George participated fully in this dynamic, neither dominating nor being overshadowed by the other personalities present. As Mrs. Thompson began indicating the approaching end of the formal session, mothers started gathering their belongings while keeping their babies engaged. Catherine helped pack away some toys while keeping George entertained, demonstrating the multitasking skills that all mothers develop. Her actions were natural and unself-conscious, showing no awareness of the continued photographic documentation. As the official playgroup session began winding down, Catherine took time for individual conversations with each mother, asking specific questions about their babies and showing genuine interest in their responses. She inquired about Emma's sleeping patterns, praised James's advanced crawling abilities, and commented thoughtfully on Lucy's obvious musical interests. These personal exchanges meant more to the mothers than any formal royal protocol could have achieved. George seemed to sense the changing energy in the room and became more clingy with Catherine, occasionally reaching up to touch her face or grab her necklace. She responded to his needs while continuing her conversations, demonstrating the natural multitasking that mothers develop. Her ability to balance social obligations with maternal responsiveness impressed all the observers. During these final interactions, several mothers found courage to share personal stories with Catherine. Sarah Mitchell mentioned her concerns about returning to work and leaving Emma in childcare. Catherine listened attentively and shared her own thoughts about balancing motherhood with professional responsibilities, creating a moment of genuine connection between women facing similar challenges. The photography session that followed was more relaxed than anyone had anticipated. Instead of formal posed shots, the images captured natural interactions. Catherine laughing as George grabbed at her hair, mothers sharing jokes while their babies played nearby, and genuine expressions of enjoyment from everyone involved. These photographs would later be praised for their authenticity and warmth. Mrs. Thompson presented Catherine with a small gift from the Playgroup, a handmade photo album containing pictures from the session and personal messages from each participating family. Catherine's reaction was genuinely moved as she read through the thoughtful comments and examined the carefully assembled photographs. She promised to treasure the gift and show it to George when he was older. The moment came for individual farewell conversations. Catherine spent several minutes with each family, thanking them for welcoming her, and George so warmly. She complimented each baby specifically, showing that she had genuinely observed and appreciated their individual personalities throughout the session. These personal acknowledgments created lasting memories for every family present. George's behavior during these farewells was particularly endearing. As if sensing the significance of the moment, he became more alert and interactive, reaching toward the other babies and making soft sounds that seemed like attempts at baby conversation. His final interaction with Emma was especially touching. Both babies seemed reluctant to end their newfound friendship. Catherine's departure preparations were handled with consideration for the baby's schedules and energy levels. She recognized that several of the children were approaching nap time and ensured that the goodbye process didn't overstimulate or upset anyone. Her maternal sensitivity extended beyond her own child to encompass all the babies present. The exchange of contact information between Catherine and several mothers surprised even the royal staff present. While formal friendships wouldn't develop due to security and protocol requirements, Catherine expressed genuine hope that their paths might cross again during future New Zealand visits. This gesture demonstrated her authentic appreciation for the connections formed during the session. As preparation for leaving began, George became slightly fussy, perhaps sensing the change in routine and environment. Catherine handled his mood shift with practiced ease, using techniques that any experienced mother would recognize: gentle rocking, soft singing, and strategic toy distraction. Her natural maternal responses continued to impress everyone watching. The cleanup process involved all the mothers working together to restore the playgroup room to its original state. Catherine participated fully, collecting toys and folding blankets while keeping George entertained. This cooperation created final moments of shared activity that reinforced the genuine connections formed during the session. During these last minutes in the playgroup room, spontaneous moments of laughter and conversation continued to occur. The babies, now comfortable with each other's presence, engaged in final interactions while their mothers completed organizational tasks. The natural flow of these activities demonstrated how successfully the formal royal visit had transformed into an authentic playgroup experience. Mrs. Thompson's final comments to Catherine expressed gratitude not only for the honor of the royal visit, but for the Duchess's genuine engagement with the Plucket program's mission. Catherine's response showed deep appreciation for the organization's work supporting New Zealand families and her understanding of the challenges facing new parents everywhere. The transition from the playgroup room to the community center's main area marked the beginning of the departure process. Catherine carried George while greeting Pluckett staff members and community center volunteers who had worked behind the scenes to make the visit successful. Her acknowledgement of their efforts was gracious and specific. A brief media opportunity in the center's main lobby allowed for final photographs and questions from traveling press. Catherine's responses focused on her enjoyment of the playgroup experience and George's positive reactions to meeting other babies. She avoided any political topics, keeping the focus on childhood development and family connections. George's behavior during this media interaction was remarkably calm, perhaps indicating his adaptation to public attention at an early age. He remained alert and interested in the new environment while staying securely attached to Catherine. His comfort level suggested positive associations with the day's experiences. The final gift exchange occurred in this main lobby area, with community center representatives presenting Catherine with locally made items for George, soft toys crafted by local artisans, and a beautiful blanket featuring New Zealand symbols. Catherine's appreciation was evident as she examined each gift carefully and promised that George would treasure them. As they moved toward the exit, Catherine took time to acknowledge the staff members who had remained in the background throughout the visit. Her recognition of security personnel, center maintenance workers, and administrative staff demonstrated awareness that successful events require contributions from many people beyond those directly visible. The final approach to the community center's exit brought Catherine and George past the crowd that had been waiting patiently outside throughout the entire visit. Their enthusiasm remained high despite the extended wait, and Catherine made the decision to spend additional time acknowledging their presence. She moved slowly along the barrier, allowing better views of George while engaging in brief conversations with well-wishers. Children in the crowd had prepared handmade cards and drawings for Prince George, though he was obviously too young to appreciate their efforts. Catherine accepted each offering graciously, promising to keep them for George to see when he grew older. Her genuine appreciation for these gestures created magical moments for the young artists who had spent time creating their gifts. George's reaction to the crowd was remarkably positive for such a young baby. Instead of being overwhelmed by the noise and attention, he seemed fascinated by the variety of faces and voices surrounding him. He occasionally reached toward interesting objects or sounds, maintaining his natural curiosity despite the unusual circumstances. An elderly woman near the front of the crowd called out compliments about George's beautiful blue eyes, causing Catherine to pause for a longer conversation. The woman shared memories of previous royal visits to New Zealand and expressed hope that George would return many times throughout his life. Catherine's response was warm and personal, creating a moment that the woman would clearly treasure forever. Several mothers in the crowd held their own babies, hoping for photographic opportunities with the royal pair. Catherine noticed these families and made special efforts to position herself and George for clear pictures. Her understanding of what these moments meant to other mothers guided her actions throughout the crowd interaction. Young children pushed to the front of the barriers, eager for closer looks at the baby prince. Catherine lowered George's position slightly, allowing better views while maintaining her secure hold on him. Her consideration for the children's excitement and desire to see George demonstrated natural empathy for their perspective. The presentation of flowers to Catherine continued throughout the crowd walk, with George occasionally reaching for the colorful bouquets. Catherine allowed him to touch soft petals while ensuring he couldn't grab anything potentially harmful. These small moments of baby curiosity added charm to the formal flower presentations. Media representatives capturing the crowd interaction focused particularly on George's expressions and reactions. His alertness and apparent enjoyment of the attention provided excellent photographic opportunities that would later appear in publications worldwide. The images showed a confident, comfortable baby who seemed naturally suited to public appearances. As they approached the waiting vehicle, Catherine took a final moment to wave to the entire crowd, lifting George's tiny hand to participate in the farewell gesture. The crowd's enthusiastic response suggested genuine affection for both mother and baby, creating a positive conclusion to the public portion of their visit. The transition into the official car required careful coordination to ensure George's comfort and safety while maintaining visibility for final photographs. Catherine's experience in managing these logistical challenges while protecting her baby's well-being was evident in her smooth, confident movements. Once settled in the vehicle, Catherine took a moment to reflect on the morning's experiences while George began showing signs of tiredness after his exciting adventure. Her expression suggested genuine satisfaction with how the visit had unfolded, from the authentic playgroup interactions to the positive crowd reception. The journey back to their accommodation provided Catherine with time to process the morning's events and their significance for George's future. This had been his first official public engagement, a milestone that would be remembered and referenced throughout his life. The success of the experience suggested positive foundations for his future public role. During the drive, Catherine reviewed the gifts they had received, particularly the handmade album from the Playgroup families. The thoughtful messages and photographs captured the authentic connections formed during their visit, creating a permanent record of genuine human interactions rather than mere protocol compliance. George's eventual nap in the car confirmed that the morning's activities had provided appropriate stimulation without overwhelming him. Catherine watched him sleep peacefully, recognizing that his positive adaptation to public attention was encouraging for future engagements, while hoping to maintain his natural, unaffected personality. The morning's success would be measured not only in positive media coverage, but in the authentic experiences shared with New Zealand families. Catherine's ability to create genuine connections while fulfilling royal obligations had achieved the perfect balance sought in modern royal engagements. Back at the community center, the participating mothers gathered their belongings and prepared to return home, each carrying photographs and memories that would last lifetimes. The children who had played with Prince George would grow up knowing they had shared toys, songs, and laughter with a future king during his first official public appearance. Mrs. Thompson and her Pluckett colleagues began documenting the visit's impact on their organization's visibility and mission. The royal attention would likely increase public awareness of their services and potentially attract additional support for their work with New Zealand families. The photographs from the Playgroup session would be carefully selected and distributed by the Royal Press Office, ensuring that images showing authentic childhood interactions reached global audiences. These pictures would help shape public perceptions of the young prince's personality and his family's approach to royal duties. Sarah Mitchell returned home with Emma, immediately calling family members to share details of their extraordinary morning. The yellow daisy dress that Emma wore would be carefully preserved, along with the photographs and memories of the day she played with Prince George at the Pluckett Playgroup. As news of the visit spread throughout New Zealand and internationally, the positive reception confirmed that Catherine's approach to introducing George to public life had been exactly right. The combination of authentic maternal behavior with gracious royal presence had created a template for successful future engagements. The lasting impact of this single morning would extend far beyond the immediate participants, inspiring other royal families in their approach to childhood public appearances and demonstrating that formal protocols could coexist beautifully with genuine human connection and natural childhood behavior.